Hello, I am C-3PO, and I believe the storyteller is ready, so let us begin. Hello, I am C-3PO, and I believe the storyteller is ready, so let us begin.
At the beginning of the final episode of Season 1 of The Mandalorian, we pick up with the two scout troopers who have just apprehended Baby Yoda after having assassinated our friend Kuil. They're just kind of waiting around, knowing that they're on a job, trying to retrieve this specimen, this weird creature that they can't identify on behalf of Moff Gideon. And so they're really just kind of some bumbling idiots. They get a couple of pokes in on Baby Yoda. That hurts your soul. And then, thank God, our old pal, the nurse droid, IG-11, shows up, takes out those two scout troopers, and rescues Baby Yoda.
Yes, so IG-11 and Baby Yoda go off, and Gideon, we cut back to him. He's taunting Din, Cara, and Grief while they're inside the room that he just shut up. He says he's going to give them till nightfall before they come out and they can settle this without more fighting. And then IG-11 swoops in on his speeder, takes out a shit ton of stormtroopers, and a big battle ensues. Our heroes are actually kind of winning, and then Moff Gideon shoots a single blaster at kind of like a power generator on the floor and creates a big explosion that hurts Din. Cara comes out and she grabs Din, retreats him back inside, and now they're kind of back inside, surrounded, and Moff Gideon sends in the flamethrowers.
Right, and this kind of seems like it's going to be curtains for our precious Mando. He's in a lot of trouble, and he's fading fast. Also, he will not allow for his helmet to be removed because he's in the company of people, living creatures rather, who aren't his family. Well, I guess first we have another great rescue from Baby Yoda, who swoops in at the sign of this giant, the flame troopers are coming in, they blow a huge ball of fire in at our heroes, and Baby Yoda steps in and just brushes it off with his force powers because he's so amazing. Then all the living heroes, aside from Din, get ahead so that IG-11 can do some nursing, some necessary nursing. After quite a bit of reluctant coaxing, he allows his helmet to be removed, and we see Mando's face for the first time. And he's injected with some Bacta fluid, which is to bring him back to consciousness.
Yes, IG-11 takes Mando underground. They're navigating in the sewers, and they find their way across the Armorer. So they find where the Mandalorian underground caves were, and there's just a bunch of piled up Mandalorian armor. Din realizes after speaking with the Armorer that by revealing themselves to protect him, he put them all in danger, and the Empire came down and wiped a good chunk of them out. Some may have been able to escape, but it's pretty much hard to tell. While down there, the Armorer gives him a jetpack because I'm sure they've got some spare ones. She refuses to leave with him, but she sends him on a mission to return Baby Yoda to where he came from because it is the way. And in the process, the work that he has done to protect Baby Yoda and the bond that they have forged means that they are now a clan of two with the signet of the Mudhorn. And then they move on together. The Armorer takes out the stormtroopers that come to follow them, but the rest of our heroes follow down the rest of the way in the tunnels to the lava river. And then they break their free on a gondola boat, and they're heading down the lava river when they realize they're going to be flanked by some stormtroopers.
Right, so their only escape in this lava river has been head off by the bad guys, and IG-11 has the brilliant idea to self-destruct because he has all this internal coding that dictates whether or not he can allow himself to be captured on one hand. He also, of course, has to preserve Baby Yoda as best he can. That's his first and foremost goal as a piece of programming. And so he goes out in a blaze of glory. He sacrifices himself, goes out towards the villains first, and he blows up. He self-destructs, and he takes out all the villains with him, and that, of course, gives our heroes the chance to break free.
Yes, our heroes come through the other side. They realize they're kind of home free, and then a TIE fighter comes in and starts shooting at them. Din decides, you know what? Let's bring some Mandalorian skill to the table, puts on the jetpack, and flies off into the air. He hooks himself onto the TIE fighter. He brings out an explosive. He drops it, and then he gets one more, and it's a semtex or sticky of some sort, and he hooks the thermal detonator aboard and then jumps back off with his jetpack, blows up part of the wing of the TIE fighter as it goes flying down to the surface. And then he goes and lands to meet up with Baby Yoda, Greef, and Cara. They kind of congratulate each other. Cara's going to stick around with Greef and maybe do some bounty hunter work and see the town is no longer Imperial run, so maybe it's not going to be the worst place for her to be. But Din's mission now is to go off with Baby Yoda as a family, and he needs to find a place where this child came from, whether that means the Jedi or his species. And then from that point, we cut off to them taking away, and then cut to the crashed TIE fighter where a black lightsaber emerges from the side, cutting a hole, and Moff Gideon emerges with the dark saber from the crashed TIE fighter. And we realize that there's a lot more to this story than we at first knew.
Yeah, it was really gratifying the way they introduced Jedi to the story here in this season finale, because they very neatly set up for season 2 that Mando's main mission is to find the Jedi or what exists of them at this time, because he knows it's most important he get Baby Yoda
or
to
Yoda
them.
species.
But it's also or Yoda species, that's right. And they might be one and the same.
Yeah.
But it's also a really healthy reminder, I think, that the Jedi are not a ubiquitous thing in this galaxy. I think it's really easy for a lot of us fans to forget that most of these people don't have any idea what the Jedi are. They're just kind of this mythic mystery.
Well, the Armorer had a line of, "The songs of eons past tell of battles between Mandalore the Great and an order of sorcerers called Jedi that fought with such powers." And so
Right.
Mandalorian doesn't know what it is, but just by the notion that Baby Yoda uses telepathy, that the Armorer at least has heard that, okay, this thing is probably a Force user, and then thus maybe a Jedi, because most people would have associated the two as one and the same, with them being the only public Force users in the last many thousand years, and there's only a couple thousand of them in galaxies of trillions of people.
And obviously, we don't know if Luke Skywalker is going to make an appearance in this show. It would be really gratifying if they could find a way to do that. But we do know, and we're going to save this for when we talk about the news a little bit later, but we do know that Ahsoka is going to appear in season 2. And so that's going to have some kind of impact on Din's relationship with the Jedi, Baby Yoda's relationship with the Jedi. All of that is going to come to a head in probably a really exciting way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, we'll get to that in a little bit, but it definitely, it could be the kind of moment that's a bit of a cliffhanger at the end of next season, where the character's
Probably.
introduced. Maybe we don't really get to learn that much. But yeah, we'll get to that in a little bit, but it's definitely, I can imagine that Ahsoka will only be brought in to either connect with Sabine as a Mandalorian or for the purposes of training Baby Yoda. And so I think there's one of those two. And if it's the latter, then yeah, that'd be very cool. More likely than Luke.
What is Sabine's connection to the Darksaber?
Okay, yeah, let's get into a little bit more information about the Darksaber. So Sabine is a Mandalorian. She was recruited by the Empire when she was very young. She's very gifted with explosives. She's a little pyromaniac as a kid. And so she was involved in a project that ultimately she helped develop some weapons that they actually used on her own people. And so she kind of joined the rebellion in that fashion. And when they came across the Darksaber as they found Darth Maul, when Ezra and Kanan came across Darth Maul on their kind of hunt for holocrons and whatnot, they stumbled across that way. And Sabine comes across the Darksaber, and the Darksaber was created by the first Mandalorian Jedi. He created and wielded it, and it became kind of a symbol of the leader of Mandalore. It was passed down beyond that point, dissimilar to the way lightsabers were used in the past. It became an heirloom of the culture almost. And so
I didn't realize that Din or rather that the Darksaber had a Mandalorian connection. That's very interesting. Will our Mando be familiar with this weapon, do you think?
It's possible, and it would make a lot of sense for the Mandalorian. Darth Maul wielded the Darksaber for a time. Pre Vizsla, who was voiced by Jon Favreau in the Clone Wars, was the wielder of it prior to Darth Maul. Sabine wielded it after Darth Maul, and she formed a strong bond with the Kyber crystal, because the Kyber crystal was not initially found. It was initially bonded with the initial Mandalorian. And so that's another thing that they've really introduced with Disney's version of Star Wars, is the bond that Jedi are able to make with their Kyber crystals. So the fact that Rey, the Skywalker's saber, called to her, sort of thing, like showing additional, I guess, proof that someone would be the heir to an item, you could almost say, that it's like their birthright. And so Sabine kind of formed that bond, but she did surrender it to the person who she believed would be the best leader of Mandalore. And she had no interest in that, just because she formed a kind of a semi-bond with the Kyber. She passed it on to Bo-Katan, who was the last person to wield it. She was the leader of Mandalore, and we know nothing of what happens at that specific point. Between the original trilogy timeline, what happens on Mandalore. So we know a little bit before they were kind of fighting and pushing back against the Empire, and Bo-Katan held the Darksaber and was leading the factions. But in the decade prior to this show, or like the 7 years prior to this show, some really bad shit happens on Mandalore that we're going to definitely find out more about, because how does Moff Gideon get this Darksaber? He's basically pillaged. It would be like him coming out and wearing the crown of the King of England and being like, well, clearly you killed the King of England.
Well, exactly. And it's a really good way to preempt a specific personal beef between our main hero and our main villain in this series. Like, already it's set up why they might have a specific, other than just the fact that they're like at odds and they both want the child. Clearly there is some like background, some history, not maybe between he and Din, although it's not impossible, but certainly between Moff Gideon and Din's culture. And so that's going to be really interesting. As for the Darksaber's powers, is it specifically different from a lightsaber traditionally? Like, I know visually it looks like kind of more like a scimitar.
Yeah, it's not different. It has very similar properties to the way a lightsaber would act. It's an even more outlandish design and less practical, but super fucking cool. And the black color, it looks like they are going to be introducing more, not necessarily a similar blade shape, but similar Kyber cores in the High Republic. So maybe like black light style lightsabers where it's a little bit inversed, which is this what it's kind of like, as opposed to the white core, a little bit like white on the outside.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. It's very cool.
I do have a bit of a theory, though, after watching this particular episode, and I know it's also based a little bit on race as well, but I think Moff Gideon might be a Mandalorian.
Yeah, that works.
By blood. I think there's a chance that he was part of the Mandalorians who followed the Empire, and did some form of coup in some way, shape, or form to help undermine what the Mandalorians have, and were potentially was the reason to drive them underground. Initially, when he was cast, it made sense because of the I guess kind of like Giancarlo Esposito is I guess he's Hispanic or has Latin roots. I don't know where his roots are particularly, but it definitely fits with others' depictions of how Mandalorians have looked as well. And I don't know, it intrigues me, and it makes sense, because how fucking else does he get this thing, and how does he have any need to wield it or understanding of how to wield it? Is he force sensitive? Is that why he's drawn to it in that way, shape, or form? Probably not, but it's kind of interesting.
Well, let me build on this a little bit, because I was kind of wondering, Gideon is generationally older than our Mandalorian. And in the flashback, when young boy Din has just kind of been separated from his parents, and he's just about to be rescued and taken in by the Mandalorians, and he's the little hatch is opened up, and standing above him is a very classic looking Mandalorian. So similar armor to the armor that he'll eventually wear, similar to the Fett's even more so, specifically because it's got that weird antenna coming off of the helmet. And this is, whoever it was, this is the Mandalorian who brought our Mandalorian into the Creed. And what if they build that into the story? Like, what if the specific Mandalorian who brought him in is Moff Gideon? That would be amazing.
Yeah, that would be awesome. And that actually does fit right in with what my theory is because the people who come to rescue him are Death Watch. And they're the war first, ask questions later faction of Mandalorian culture. And they kind of like live off a little bit in seclusion on one of the moons of Mandalore because they're so, they're extremists. And so
they're a brute squad.
Yeah, so it would make sense for him to feel the part of the Mandalorian Creed, but become disillusioned with the clan that he was brought in by, and so that could be kind of an interesting way to go about it. And maybe and it would add extra to what's the name of the show, The Mandalorian. That's the Mandalorian being a foundling, he's not from Mandalore, so the Mandalorian is A, Din Djarin, is B, Baby Yoda. And maybe the main villain is the Moff. Like maybe they're all like maybe he's the only one who's Mandalorian by race, but the other two are the real Mandalorians. And so it adds even additional layers to the title, which is something I of course like.
This is the episode where they actually kind of explicitly state that to be a Mandalorian is not so much a race as it is a creed. And it always kind of rubbed me the wrong way just because they treat it like it's a big reveal. And to me, that was just kind of presumptive. I never really thought of it necessarily as a specific species anyway. Do you agree, or at least you understand?
Yeah. It is a race, but at the same time, like I understand like that it is also a creed. Like it, I think that also comes in a way to the way Death Watch are. So Death Watch, you would almost say they would view themselves as Mandalorians by what they perceive the creed to be. And anyone born on the planet of Mandalore, they would almost reject if they were pacifists and say, well, you're not Mandalorians because the creed trumps the race. And so almost like a foundling, it doesn't matter where you come from, you can still be. And that also fits very nicely with Rey Skywalker as well. In terms of the found families, and which has become a big theme within Star Wars and always has been, but is something that has, of course, been blown to much larger proportions with the sequel trilogy. So, I think it definitely makes a lot of sense in that regard, and I think it would be really cool if they had some extra kind of Mandalorian roots tying them back.
Okay, I want to talk about IG-11. I think it's so interesting that Taika Waititi, who directed this episode, allowed his character to be the hero twice in this episode, and in a really big way. Both times in a really plot changing way. He was the most heroic person in the season finale as the director of the episode. And by the way, I'm for it because I love IG-11, especially as a nurse droid. I love Taika as a director and a creator in general. Marks across the board, full marks.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have no takebacks in this episode. It's my favorite episode of the season. And I think Taika kills it across the board, and I want him back for more directing projects. And I hope he does the voice of all IG droids for any time they need to be reused. But he does make himself the hero. Baby Yoda is the hero, protecting them from the big fireball. But it also, when Din's hurt, you just assume Baby Yoda is going to heal him. But then he has to protect them with the fireball, and then he's all tuckered out and sleepy. And so he's not able to.
Plus, it's not as clearly established at that point that they're family. Like, that's the next scene where they're like, okay, you're his dad now, so you're good. But
True.
They kind of needed to save that until afterward.
True. I guess that's true in the sense of having that extra moment, like when he hugs Mando's leg in the final scene, which is so adorable. I actually have so many winning moments. So let me just go through some of those.
Well, I just wanted to say one more thing about IG-11, and specifically that scene with Din where the helmet comes off and he's reluctant. And all through this season, he's been prejudiced about droids, and that's an interesting character trait about him. And I also understand that he's really rigid about the Mandalorian policies. But I find it a little dense that he's like, no, you can't take off my helmet, droid. No living thing can see me without my helmet.
Yeah.
It's like, you've been a Mandalorian for how long, and you've never thought of the droid loophole?
Yeah. That one, I agree. That's a little weird. But he just had his bell rung pretty good, as Cara Dune would say. So I don't know. It makes sense that he's not really thinking that clearly. Because we're right on that specific point, I have to go to some of the really good lines because IG-11 has so many. So to nurse and protect, I think is an amazing. It could be a great title for the episode as well.
Sure.
What is your main to nurse and protect? I am not a living thing. Watch your feet. It's molten lava.
I didn't catch that. That's so good.
Oh yeah, that's a great one. And you will live, and I will have served my purpose. And I think that's just a really sweet line. And then there's the two amazing exchanges between him and Din. There's nothing to be sad about. I have never been alive. I'm not sad. Yes, you are. I'm a nurse droid. I've analyzed your voice. This is Bacta spray. It will heal you in a matter of hours. You have suffered damage to your central processing unit. You mean my brain? That was a joke. It was meant to put you at ease. So I think that he's got such great Star Wars humor. I don't think it in any way, shape, or form doesn't fit perfectly in the episode. I love the entry, like the intro part as well with Jason Sudeikis and Adam Pally. Did you not just hear that Moff Gideon killed a dozen of his own troopers just to make a point?
I like it too. It's really good comedy. I liked it the first time. I won't say I didn't like it as much the second time, but once you know it's Adam Pally and Jason Sudeikis, it's really hard not to hear them, especially Sudeikis. You're like, oh, that's just Jason. That's just Jason Sudeikis. That's just his Joe Biden. And it's fine because they're supposed to be kind of numbskulls. And by the way, I wish that Star Wars would pick a lane on whether or not stormtroopers are good at aim, because that joke existed for years, and then they walked it back and they're like, no, stormtroopers are good soldiers, and then they continue to throw in all these like.
When did they walk that back?
Haven't you and I had that discussion before about how like stormtroopers canonically? Well, I mean, first of all, the Clone Wars, certainly clone troopers are good aim.
Yes, because clone troopers were bred and they were built off of Jango Fett's DNA. So the problem is to show that I can kind of just explain. Stormtroopers in particular, like the white stormtroopers that we see during the Imperial era and ultimately the First Order era as well, are indoctrinated and poorly trained by individuals from the Empire. The brotherhood that was developed through the clone army was what allowed them to succeed, and the fact that they were bred to be of Jango Fett's kind of lineage, and the Kaminoans are excellent cloners. They ultimately didn't have good lifespans, so they had excellent quality for a shorter period of time, and that's why the Emperor switched over. They were ultimately never able to train standard stormtroopers very well, but those who were of different levels were higher quality. So, for example, the Death Troopers, they were excellent soldiers. The standard white stormtroopers, the scout troopers, these guys really kind of do suck. They're not that good at all. They have terrible aim. They just mentioned the stormtrooper with the Bill Burr thing. I wasn't a stormtrooper, wise ass. The Rise of Skywalker, the stormtroopers don't hit anything.
I guess I'm just kind of sick of the joke, and I know of course I understand that clone troopers and stormtroopers are not the same thing, and I know it's technically in the text, and I don't really want to relitigate whether or not the prequels are good movies, but I don't think to the layman it was clearly enough said that all the stormtroopers aren't clones, and I think that's problematic because we go back to this prequel trilogy and suddenly we're expected to be terrified by this army of what we always thought were bumbling oafs. And so it did kind of feel like it went back and forth to me. And plus, they're just making the same inside joke based on essentially a meme that was created before memes. And I'm kind of over it.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I thought it was kind of funny. And I thought that, I enjoyed the entire sequence. I loved the sequence of IG-11 and Baby Yoda flying through the town and just wrecking shop, and Baby Yoda laughing along, loving life.
Okay, well, and as long as we're talking about stormtroopers, certainly that moment where IG-11 takes out those two guys, but even more so, the armorer after the heroes have left, and she single-handedly takes out maybe like 6 stormtroopers. We have never seen such brutality maybe in Star Wars. Like the way their armor just like crushes like an egg. in her hand. Like, it's like, and she throws one guy into the fire, and that was mercy. That guy got the most merciful death of any of them.
Oh, absolutely. It was a moment that very clearly, I've talked about it recently with all the Colin Trevorrow stuff, the clay pigeon moment where with Chewie throwing up a Knight of Ren and Skeet shooting him. And like, so the way that the hammer goes into the helmet of the stormtrooper and like that just rocking shatter of the helmet, it's just so destructive. And it's like representative of, think of that as also like the skull. And that's what the helmets are designed to semi look like. So it's a badass moment. And she just, without a sweat, and just ends up in a complete badass pose. She, in every way, shape, and form, is, I think, going to have as big of a role next season. I think there'll be an arc with that character.
She's also just really valuable, and she has been for the entire season. She's been really good for tidy exposition. Just like, give us a little background about... Yeah, well, exactly. In the way like Maz Kanata is. It's just like, oh, great, now I know a little more, and it wasn't compromising to the story at all, and this person's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Baby Yoda peeking out of the sack was a super cute moment. It was hard to watch them punching Baby Yoda, though. And the little squeals.
Twice, too.
Yeah. Moff Gideon has such a badass cape.
Yes, he looks very cool.
He just looks cool in every way. He's got an awesome uniform, and like you said before, his just cool and calm demeanor. Some of his lines: "Your astute panic suggests that you understand your situation. I would prefer to avoid any further violence and encourage a moment of consideration. The structure you are trapped in will be razed in short order, and your storied lives will come to an unceremonious end. If you are asking if you can trust me, you cannot. Burn them out." I mean, these are just like so many like just cut lines, and there's not a single like bit of fat in anything he says.
And then in come the flame troopers, who are pretty traditional looking, but they have like red stripes on their masks. And at least just the glance I got, it kind of reminded me of like when a lion has been eating a gazelle and there's blood all over its face. Like these stormtroopers just suddenly look so much scarier.
That's a really good comparison. That's a really good comparison. It draws me into the paint schemes of the Clone Wars. That's what makes me think of, but like when it comes to the design, absolutely. That's a disgusting way of thinking about it, but like the blood just dripping from your mouth for sure.
Do you want to do some quotes or some trivia? We got to get to all of it.
Let's finish off the quotes. I don't actually have that many more. So let me just go through the ones that I haven't gotten to. Kara, the sewers are good, like with actual enthusiasm. Mandalorian isn't a race, it's a creed.
Let me have a warrior's death. I won't leave you. This is the way. He got in a good "this is the way" in this episode.
Yep. No, it's kind we're enemies, but this individual is not. You expect me to search the galaxy for the home of this creature and deliver it to a race of enemy sorcerers?
Yeah. How about, come on, baby, do the magic hand thing?
Yeah. Hey, let's make the baby do the magic hand thing. Some of my favorite people are bounty hunters.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
That was a good line. Or maybe it'll take care of you.
He does say, he says it to Kara.
Yeah. Or maybe it'll take care of you. And then the "why don't you hang on to that," the little exchange between Din and Baby Yoda at the end is very cute.
Just to punctuate our ongoing conversation about how this show aesthetically so mirrors video games, in that big shootout in the first act of this episode, it is such a traditional video game, and specifically Star Wars video game mechanic, to get to the big gun to kill all the enemies so you can escape. Like that's specifically a thing you have to do in Star Wars video games, and they do it right here in this plot. And it's almost like we've seen so much of this tradition through this season that I have to think is deliberate, that it's like, this is a great way to punctuate it at the end of the season.
Yeah, he even gets the jetpack.
Yeah.
And now you get to
that. Is that gonna is the jetpack gonna cause him trouble? Because traditionally they're not always a friend to the
at some point it will.
Soldier.
At some point it'll cause him some trouble. I sure shit hope it has nothing to do with his death when it eventually happens.
You think he'll die?
Eventually, all characters that are main characters in Star Wars will die.
Sure, but it would be weird for him to die in his own show.
May not.
It might be better for him to like be an old man in episode 10 and he dies a hero or something.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting, but in some medium, they'll be able to kill him, probably.
I guess that's probably so. Yeah. Okay, so I'll give you some trivia questions. A Padawan question. What is Cara Dune's full name?
Cara Cynthia Dune. She's from Alderaan.
That's correct. Where's she from? Yeah,
Alderaan.
she's from Alderaan.
Yeah, which is pretty cool. A very peaceful planet.
And it gives her motivation as well. Like her background kind of indicates why she's so hardcore about the politics of this galaxy.
Hell yes, absolutely. All of her people were killed.
How did she survive? Do you know? Where was she?
Well, she was off planet. She was a rebel shock trooper, so it would have made sense that she was doing other things like Leia was. She could have been at the Battle of Scarif. Who knows?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, for sure. Anyway, I've come around on her. I still think she's a little one-dimensional, but
you're right that she's
fine.
Definitely the NPC sidekick. It's excellent, the comparison. But I like her as a character. What position does the disgraced Grief Karga hold?
What position does he hold? Oh, I don't know. Position with whom?
Assuming the Empire.
I don't know.
A magistrate.
What is a magistrate?
Essentially like a for-hire sheriff or a ward, like kind of like a, which is essentially what he is. It's just he does bounty hunters as opposed, like he's a seedier version of what he professionally was.
He does kind of have a bit of a sheriff vibe, except for that he's also kind of off the books and kind of corrupt.
Oh yeah, exactly. And that's why, because it's part of Moff Gideon's flaunting the knowledge that he has of each of them.
Jedi Knight question. What was Moff Gideon's role during the Purge?
Oh, Moff Gideon's role during the Purge. Oh, fuck. I know this.
So this might actually negate our theory that he was a Mandalorian during those days, right?
We don't know when the Purge was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's an I something officer. It's 3 letters.
Correct.
Yeah.
An ISB officer?
I was going to guess ISO, so I would have had 2 of the 3 letters.
It stands for Imperial Security Bureau.
Yeah, I knew it was Imperial something, obviously, but okay, an ISB officer. What type of gun does Gideon use or bring out and threaten them with?
I didn't notice if he used a gun. Does he have like a pistol?
No, the big gun.
Oh, like the big cannon.
Yeah, the big gun. Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't know there was anything to take from it.
It's an E-Web heavy repeating blaster.
Oh, okay. I wouldn't have guessed that.
Now, Cara Cynthia Dune could tell you about it.
Why is that?
Well, that's what he starts out by. That's why he says, like, he starts out, this is an E-Web heavy repeating blaster. If you don't know about it, Cara Cynthia Dune of Alderaan can tell you about it because clearly it was used on her friends, or they said it was used on her friends.
I don't know if this was actually said in the episode, but I found it in I was Wikipedia or something. What do Mandalorians nickname jetpacks?
Oh,
or at least what do they name this jetpack? I guess
I don't know. Wings.
It's called a Rising Phoenix, which is kind of funny.
Yeah. Phoenix. That's a commonly used thing associated with the rebels, to be honest. But actually, Sabine was the one they find out. Sabine, I think, was the initial crest creator for the Rebellion Phoenix, and she's a Mandalorian. So who knows? Maybe there's some connection there.
I find there's a little bit of inconsistency. This just came into my head. We can get back to the trivia in a second, but I find there's a little bit of inconsistency with Baby Yoda's power and when he chooses to wield it. Like towards the end of the episode, somebody tells Din, he'll die without you. And I kind of wonder if that's true because he could fend for himself. He's extremely powerful. Or take the opening sequence where he's being punched by the oafish stormtroopers. Like he could definitely like crush their skulls with his mind. He's tiny, but he could probably fend for himself.
But he doesn't understand what's going on.
I guess.
He has no situational like understanding or awareness. It's purely a matter of impulse and instinct. So like an animal, he would maybe be able to survive if you left him on Sorgan because there was frogs around that he could be able to go out and find and eat. And so like potentially like if you left him in a bog, but if you left him on Navarro on like a lava plant, like I think you have to kind of treat him a little bit like a frog. In his current state, that he could survive depending on the environment by himself. He could protect himself, but he couldn't provide and he couldn't survive on his own. Probably someone was looking after him when they were keeping him in as a prize on Arvala 7 for some reason.
Do you have any more trivia questions? You didn't give me a master question yet.
Master question: what arm of Mandalorian culture raised Din?
Oh, did they say? I know they did. I don't know.
The Fighting Corps.
Okay, the Fighting Corps. What does that mean? So that just means he's more of a badass than some?
Yeah, and that lends additional credence to the Death Watch finding him, in the sense that he was bred specifically to be a fighter during times of pacifism in Mandalore. And so if he was bred to be a fighter during times of pacifism, then it further cements his position with Death Watch. But then again, with Death Watch, the first wielder of the Darksaber, my other legend question or master question, which I won't ask you about, but the person who created the Darksaber was Tar Vizsla. And so House Vizsla, which Paz Vizsla, which was the big heavy infantry Mando that Jon Favreau voiced, and Jon Favreau voiced Pre Vizsla, who was a descendant of Tar Vizsla, who wielded the Darksaber before Darth Maul killed him. But essentially, this being, if Death Watch was the one who found Din, then Death Watch being Vizsla associated, like a Vizsla, like if he was found by House Vizsla, then it would potentially make sense for him to be the heir of the Darksaber.
Okay.
Even though it would be his adopted right. It wouldn't be but that would potentially, like, if he was the only one of his house continuing a true Mandalorian culture and creed, then he would be the one who was the heir if he was willing to lead Mandalore.
And is he alive in this timeline? Is he still out there?
No, Tar Vizsla, like that, he was probably of the Old Republic era. It's a passed down heirloom.
Oh, I see. And so you say that Moff Gideon was in the Death Watch as a Mandalorian.
We don't know if Moff Gideon was a Mandalorian. But if he was a Mandalorian, he definitely would have been part of Death Watch.
They say in this episode, and I don't know if I realized this before this episode, but that the legend is that he was executed for war crimes. So people are aware of him as a historical figure, but they think that he's dead. He faked his death. So how has he retained power within the galaxy if he's trying to fly under the radar, so to speak?
He's a Moff, and it's his part of the galaxy. So it's been, I guess, believed in other parts of the galaxy, but that's because he spun that tale so that people leave his corner alone. Right. So that's likely the yarn he's been spinning, and that's why Kara thinks that. But that's because he's decided that he's the marshal of his own territory. And
the only other thing I wanted to say about this episode, and it's such a tiny thing, but when they first get into the fire gondola, there's already a droid aboard, and it's an R2 droid.
You hate
but
this.
It appears to have been modified to have long arms and legs, I guess, so it can row or something. And I don't have any mature reason for not liking the R2 unit with arms and legs, but I hate it. I just don't like looking at it. It's like how some people feel about spiders.
That's fine. I have nothing against it whatsoever, but I think it looks kind of funny, and I think it's appropriate for a backwater kind of planet to have something like that.
It'd be like if a baby had muscles. I'm like, what's happening here?
Well, let's face it, Baby Yoda's got some muscles.
I guess underneath that little sack.
Flexing those brain muscles.
Anything else? Anything else you want to say about the season of Mandalorian overall?
I mean, it was really awesome. I have my rankings here. I'd say episode 8, then episode 3, then episode 7, then episode 2, then episode 1, then episode 6, then episode 4, then episode 5. And so I think this is probably my favorite episode. It was called Redemption, was the name of it.
And what is being redeemed here?
Mandalorians? I don't know. Maybe all the things we've theorized that title will mean a lot more, make a lot more sense. It could be redeeming what the Imperials did to the other Mandalorians. It could be redemption for him as an individual, now finally getting his signet and forming a family with the creature that he was supposed to continue his scummy life by trading off.
What is the significance of this little horned medallion that he trades between Cara and Baby Yoda, and then he gets back in the end? It looks like some Ed Hardy garbage, if I'm honest.
It's the same thing that hangs above, which was another one of my questions. How does Din usually enter the Mandalorian caves?
And I don't know.
Through the
Is
bazaar.
It with that? It's a key?
Through the bazaar.
Oh, okay.
But like there's a specific part earlier when he enters through there, they have that same skull hanging over the entrance. So it's just a little like medallion on a chain of the skull of the mythosaur.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Right, the mythosaur.
Yeah, so it's the symbol of the Mandalorian people.
Okay, are we good for this episode?
Yeah, I'd say the only other thing is I'm really curious to know about what Moff Gideon was talking about with the Night of 1,000 Tears. But that was definitely was something we're going to be going back to in some way, shape, or form. Because sounds like it was a pretty fucked up time.
Well, we will find out, and we won't have to wait as long for this season as we will for a lot of shows in 2020. So thank God.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about the news.
Okay, sure. Let's see what's in the news. So Disney Plus finally launched in the UK, so they're finally seeing The Mandalorian, which feel bad for them. That took an awful long time.
Yeah. Just asking people to rip it off.
Oh, absolutely. Michael Bean, I don't remember. I don't know how to spell his name. He's from Terminator and Tombstone. He's supposed to play a bounty hunter from Din's past in Mandalorian Season 2.
Okay.
He hasn't really been in anything recently, so it's almost like I think like him, Nick Nolte, like it makes me think that Jon Favreau, when he wrote this, maybe he wrote this in like the late 90s and penciled in who he wanted for characters and then had to rearrange them afterwards. But was like, I still want him for a bit part because this guy's not been in anything recently. And so it's just
maybe he's a theater actor, though. Maybe he's been doing other things.
Possibly. But I feel like they are using a lot of people who you could have cast at any point since Star Wars was created. Like they've been in the business and relevant and would have been reasonable casts at that time, which I mean, fuck, it works. It's great.
This is certainly true for Nick Nolte and what's his name who plays Grief Karga.
Carl Weathers,
these are not really, they're not really relevant actors. They're great, and I wouldn't recast them having seen it. I think they're perfect.
Oh, absolutely.
But they are strange choices here in the 21st century.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And then the much, much, much bigger season 2 casting bit of news is Rosario Dawson is Ahsoka Tano in season 2, and so this is huge Star Wars news. This is like one of the biggest things since Rise of Skywalker came out. The title of like this is massive Star Wars news, and so this is very cool. There's potential that it's going to be a backdoor pilot for an Ahsoka series that's being thrown out there. We have no idea what capacity she will be in it, but Rosario Dawson will be our live action Ahsoka Tano.
I mean, this is a pretty famous person. Like, it doesn't seem to me she wants to come into this just for like a quick little bit part in season 2 of The Mandalorian. Like, this is an investment of time. She's very well liked by the Star Wars community by the looks of things. Like, I've really, it's a rare situation where there's a bit of like nerdy pop cultural news and the response is almost entirely positive. Like, she has a good rapport with the culture and, well, at least the likeness is really positive.
Yeah, well, let me get into like some of this stuff. So It was something she brought up a few years ago. Someone did like someone tweeted about it and said that she should play Ahsoka. She said that was really cool. I thought that was a cool idea. Then someone did some fan art and she like retweeted it because she thought it looked awesome. And then she was asked
I've
in
seen
interview,
that.
and then she was asked in interviews about it. And like, would you ever want to be in like something like Star Wars? And she mentioned like, people have on the internet always brought up about the Ahsoka Tano thing. And like, so she would actively like was talking about the character and the interest in the part and a lot of different things. And so that was phenomenal. And has been rumored to be a reasonable casting for it. Now, if you look up pictures of it, you'll see this stupid, creepy, wide-eyed version of Rosario Dawson looking like Ahsoka Tano, where she has like the milky white eyes of Emperor Palpatine for no reason whatsoever. It's like the person did Photoshop and never looked at a picture of Ahsoka. But if you look and find ones that actually have human-colored eyes, it really, really looks excellent. And I think that she'll be able, with the right makeup and practical effects, to make this work. The voice of Rosario Dawson, I think, can fit with Ahsoka. The odds of it being Ashley Eckstein. Ashley Eckstein came out and said that I'm an actress and I've performed in all types of mediums, live action, theater, voiceover, and it's been a dream come true doing Ahsoka Tano for the last 14 years, and we continue to be grateful for the opportunities to create stories for Ahsoka Tano, and I'm always happy to have her legacy continue. I'm only one member of the tremendously talented team of people that brings Ahsoka to life. The final decisions for Ahsoka are not mine to make, and I cannot comment on something that I truly know nothing about. So she's not involved in any way, shape, or form. But people were kicking up a bit of a stink about Ashley Eckstein not being involved because she was someone who was so heavily involved with the character and it's been so synonymous. And then some people have also been up in a kind of kicked up a stink about something that's really hard, really weird, and hard to kind of get a grasp on. Rosario Dawson's kind of been implicated in a hate crime. And
oh shit,
yeah, and kind of like, I don't know a whole lot, maybe looks a little guilty, so that doesn't look great, but at the same time,
do you want to shed any light, or should we just like leave that to our own researching?
Yeah, I'd leave it to your own researching. It's a transgendered hate crime, and it was against her and family members, and so there could be some truth to it. There could be zero truth to it. There could be zero truth to her involvement. There could be because she's the famous one, then like ultimately maybe that was why they were like there's potential that this is like innocent until proven guilty. However, if she is guilty, she's a monster. But
is it dredging up the past, or is it like a recent?
No, she hasn't been
incident?
charged. Like she's been, it's going through the ringer, I guess, or whatever. But then again, at the same time, she's also dating Cory Booker. So
yeah,
there's some things that don't add up, and Disney can't be that stupid, like to not like she's in the mid, like she's implicated, and like it just doesn't make sense for the research to not have been done. And so I'm hoping that it's fine. However, there have been some people who are involved with Lucasfilm in ways, shapes, and forms, whether they're authors for other mediums, who have posted excitement and then posted follow-ups of, well, I'm learning a little bit of information that Rosario Dawson might be a terrible person, so I'm curious about how this changes my excitement. So like it's TBD as to whether or not she might be a bad person, and that would suck a case, but if that's not true, and let's act as if it is because we don't know, if that's not true, then I think this is really good news. I think the casting's excellent, and I think the fit works. And I mean, she can be replaced if that is true, but ultimately, I think bringing the character live action is really important. I think it's something that can have people. It kind of bridges the gap between a new and an old. I think it brings it it definitely brings opportunities for you to bring Thrawn live action, which excites me. Ezra live action, Sabine just makes a fuck ton of sense because she's a Mandalorian, and the last time we see Ahsoka is with Sabine. So it's just a lot of things that make a ton of sense for it to work. And especially with having Baby Yoda, who's going to train this creature. It makes sense for Ahsoka to be that one. We found out that Moff Gideon gets in a lightsaber duel, or not a lightsaber duel, but he gets in a fight using his lightsaber in season 2, which some people assumed meant lightsaber on lightsaber. I did not, but now have definitely a higher belief that it could be that. Now that someone wielding lightsabers could be in the season.
Let me just back up because you covered a lot of ground right there.
Yes, sorry.
I can't speak to whether or not Rosario Dawson, whether she's a good person. It doesn't matter. We'll find out, I guess,
exactly.
as the days go by. I'd rather assume that they've made a good decision in their casting. I'm not too familiar with her as an actor anyway, but I'm curious to be, should it be the right decision?
She's been in a lot of geek stuff and has passion about the stuff she's been involved in, which is a nice thing to see. So I would hope, yeah.
As for Ashley Eckstein, I think what she said in that statement is very diplomatic and very professional. I think that's exactly what she should say. I'm saddened for her if she feels excluded on something so transformative for the character that obviously she has been paramount in developing. And I certainly hope moving forward, at the very least, she has an opportunity to consult for the character in live action, maybe even do a little vocal affectation, because I think that's a really good way to sell this is the same character that you know from the animated series. Even if she is a live action actor, and I don't know what she looks like in person, I barely know what she sounds like in person, but even if she is, it has, the decision in casting her physically has to be more than she's done a great job voicing her. It has to, they have to look at more than that. They have to get somebody who's athletic and just in every way will visually evoke the sensation that she was able to bring to life vocally. And I'm not saying she couldn't play her physically, but it would be pretty extraordinary if she's voiced her for 14 years. And by the way, they're identical looking.
Yeah. It's interesting because there's a lot of ways in which you could have gone with it. You could have gone the Darth Maul route, and you could have hired a nobody and had her voice the character, and then you have no issues whatsoever. And then you can have somebody who's a physical badass, and it works. You could have gone, like, and you mentioned even still, like, that Rami Malek's voice was mixed with Freddie Mercury's at points for parts of Bohemian Rhapsody, which is extremely cool. And if you could involve Ashley Eckstein in a way that the voice is 50-50, then, I mean, that's bloody perfect. That's a lot. That's hiring somebody extra and a lot of extra work, especially seeing Rosario Dawson's a name. The odds of that are extremely small, but it would be a very cool way of, like you said, making us feel familiar with the character as well. It will feel a little weird, though, but because we know Rosario Dawson is playing Ahsoka, we expect it. It's not like we're like, well, is that the Ahsoka we know? Well, we know it's coming now. And the reveal, even if we didn't know it was coming, would be done in a way that it would be so clearly in a reveal that you would know it was indeed Ahsoka because of the way that they went about it. And so I think it makes a lot of sense. It is definitely a shame for Ashley Eckstein, but it's what you have to do. In some of the behind-the-scenes stuff for The Rise of Skywalker, Adam Driver talks about the sense of ownership over the physicality of Kylo that he has, and he won't let people. He wouldn't allow them to use stunt person. So
interesting.
Very, 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 very minimal stunt work done by his stunt person in Rise of Skywalker or anything, because of the fact that most of the acting he does as Kylo Ren is in the physicality of his performance, and that he feels that it's important. And so it's really interesting when you have someone like Din Djarin, who in the suit more often than not is Brendan Wayne, as opposed to Pedro Pascal. And so it's very different. Like the arguments you can make towards the physicality of the performance versus the voice of the performance, but it gives them a lot of options. I'm honestly surprised, very surprised that this is the one that was chosen. But it's the one that, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I think it's good.
No,
and the internet wanted it, and the internet got it.
But I think you have to service the character and the production first and foremost. And so, like, on the one hand, it's like, it's very respectable that Adam Driver was like, no, I want to have full control over the physicality of Kylo Ren. And certainly he did like such a good job with it. And not just in that he control a lightsaber. Like we saw how his head looks like a different shape when he becomes Ben Solo again. Like he did something miraculous with his physicality in that movie. And so I give him that respect. But on the other hand, we see this with like Tom Cruise, or we see it with apparently Pedro Pascal and Brandon Wayne. Like I think the latter instance is a better example of, well, he can do it better than me, and the audience won't know. I want the show to be good, and that is the thing that you have to put forward. And so I think that's something Ashley Eckstein is unfortunately a victim of in this situation. Like, we need to make the show good first and foremost, and we love you and thank you for all you've done. See you on Monday, but this isn't your gig right now.
Yeah, and that's absolutely true. And I think it'll be interesting because if there is another animated show in the hopper, it would almost be. It would probably be a little bit of a knife in the gut. Ashley Eckstein was thinking, "Oh, maybe I'll get more work," and then doesn't.
That's.
But
true.
maybe she is. Maybe Ahsoka's part of the other show, and maybe this is a cross between animation and live action. Maybe this is maybe Rosario Dawson's only doing like a couple episodes, but that it's continued on, and Ashley Eckstein will do the voice and something else. So who knows? There's so many different ways in which
you're still pretty sure they're probably going to do another animated show, which she could be in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm significantly less confident in it being based around that now. But there was a lot of smoke around them doing another show, and so. I mean, I assume they probably are, and it seems really, really weird if they weren't because they've got nothing listed on like in the hopper, and so I think they have to have something that's a hidden project that's going to be coming out in fall, like it was rumored. It just makes too much sense. But then I did hear rumors recently, or I heard from people who are involved in the business, obviously, because I don't know anybody, but they were saying that they had heard through the grapevine that wasn't actually the case, and that although everybody thought this animated show was going to involve like Ahsoka, that's just not true. And so maybe it's something else entirely. Maybe it's bloody Mark Hamill doing Luke Skywalker. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
That'd be interesting. Yeah. Okay. All right. Fine.
Yeah.
Okay. So, any other news you want to talk about? There's got to be some other things.
Not a whole lot. The book came out for The Rise of Skywalker, so I started reading that. It's been interesting because I'll be able to kind of, as we go through The Rise of Skywalker, I'll be able to kind of flesh out a couple things that are talked about in a little bit more detail. It's good. It's really good so far. I've heard the first hour and a half. It takes about the first 8 minutes of the movie is about an hour and a half of novel, of audiobook.
Okay.
And so it's a 9.5 hour audiobook. And the first like 8 minutes of the movie has become like an hour and a half of listening. And so the proportional parts that they expand upon is interesting. And the part that they cut out on Mustafar, as much as it's cool, is completely unnecessary. And so it makes sense that they cut it out. But it does seem a little weird that there were certain parts that they really never intended to be much beefier. I think some of the Palpatine scene was probably longer in a JJ script, but there's no additional real dialogue around it. It's just a little bit of extra exposition around what Kylo sees to further tell you that it's a clone, but not a whole lot extra. And it doesn't even go on to like the descriptions don't even say that like they describe the milky whiteness and they describe that it's very clearly a rotting cloned body, but they don't even describe that it looks like an unelectrified Palpatine. So
okay, what else?
Greg Grunberg, who's like one of JJ's best friends, says that JJ wasn't pressured to cut down the film, and so that there is not a JJ cut that was a JJ preferred cut of the film. He uses his words carefully to basically indicate that there may have been a 3.5 hour cut of the movie. However, that's not what, of course, the headlines people have stolen is. People's like, JJ cut, not true. Greg Grunberg, but like, that Greg Grunberg doesn't disprove that. He just says that JJ wasn't pressured into cutting down the movie additionally. But there very well could be a longer cut of the movie, but it would have been with non-action sequences because some of the production teams have come out to say that about 90% of the action sequences and shots that were shot were used for the film. And even like just any regular film, it's only about 2/3, 3/4 at best. And so this one, I guess they were much tighter on what they wanted and executing exactly what they wanted. And JJ had to do that because he had a shorter timeline for The Rise of Skywalker.
Right.
Okay. Not a whole lot else. The only other thing to say would be in a novelization, not novelization, in a comic, Luke goes searching for his lightsaber on Bespin. Lando's really paranoid. They got to get out of there, and so Luke's got to leave it behind, but he kind of tells an Ugnaught what he was looking for, and that Ugnaught keeps an eye out for it, finds it, sells it for a good price, and then eventually it ends up with Maz Kanata.
So we have a lot of really good birthdays in the next couple of weeks, and assuming we take a week off between seasons, I want to make sure I get everybody listed. Thursday, March 26th, a happy birthday to Keira Knightley, who, of course, is in the Star Wars family, though as minimally as a person can be. Sunday, the 29th, happy birthday to Amy Sedaris, whatever. Tuesday, the 31st, to Ewan McGregor, and then Thursday, the 2nd, to Alec Guinness. So both Obi-Wans are within 48 hours of each other, birthday-wise, which is very cool. Neat. And then also on Thursday, April 2nd, happy birthday to Pedro Pascal. It seemed like an appropriate one to wrap up this season on.
Oh, absolutely. That's quite convenient.
So for GottaCast 1, I thought I would do something a little bit different because we're all living our best self-isolation lives right now, and you and I are not in the same room right now. I should have said that a little earlier. I figured we could use this GottaCast 1 as an opportunity to involve some of the great fictional characters of self-isolation. Because Star Wars itself features a lot of self-isolation. I mean, Obi-Wan and Luke and Yoda are all top 5 characters, all choose self-isolation. Even Rey chooses self-isolation, and it lasts for like 10 minutes in The Rise of Skywalker. Less even. But it's something that they lean on in Star Wars. And so all 4 of these characters I've chosen here are extreme. You're going to hate all of them. I'm not asking you to choose one. I'm asking you to choose all of them. You just got to tell me how they're being used. And by the way, these are the characters, not the actors who play them. Okay? You got to cast all of them.
Okay.
The Beast, the Grinch, Shrek, and Willy Wonka. Cast them in Star Wars.
What?
Yep.
I don't even know what you mean.
Okay, so like Shrek, he might like be a junk trader in Mos Espa or something.
Okay.
But he's also in self-isolation. He's very cranky.
Well, yeah, actually that kind of works. Like an Unkar Plutt kind of character.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's make him like an Unkar Plutt kind of character on the other side of Takodana, which is Maz's planet. And so him and Maz probably had some run-ins. Like they share a property line, and he doesn't like that. And so he gets really cranky. The Beast.
Romantic Phantom of the Opera type hero.
Him and Chewbacca used to have a tag team wrestling team, and they did underworld fights on Coruscant during the Imperial era to earn extra credits to buy food because both of their species were hard up and put into slavery.
See, now you're playing the game exactly how I want you to be playing.
Perfect.
Okay, cast the Grinch.
Ah, the Grinch. On top of the mountain, stealing. So the Grinch is a pirate. He is a loner pirate who hoards, comes down in swoops, similar to the way that the Plutonians in episode 4 of The Mandalorian attack the village in Sorgan. But he comes down one night a year to raid the village. And he steals all of the things that they own, but he does it so swiftly that they don't even notice, and so they need to bring in some Jedi to catch him, and he is then brought to justice as a thief, as a pirate. This is old school, like Jedi coming into like martial law and saving the day.
Okay, but here's my only nitpick with the word pirate. Pirates are nothing if not loyal. They're not anarchists, and specifically the Grinch doesn't like community. Like, specifically, the Grinch, more than any of these characters, needs to not be a part of this group activity. And that's not pirates.
That's not true. Pirates are extremely selfish.
No, they're part of their crew. Yeah, they're selfish, but I think they're loyal to their crew. And if nothing else,
but he's a one-man crew
with their. Oh, okay. Well, he's not really a pirate then. He's kind of a mercenary or like a vigilante. Or just a really fancy thief.
Okay, he's a fancy thief.
Okay, and this one's actually kind of fun. Cast Willy Wonka in Star Wars.
Ah, that is an interesting one. Does he have to have candy associations?
I mean, no, but
but
he's
he's
what
also
he does best.
Yeah, but also I guess kind of what he produces, and that he's kind of a crazy person.
He's a businessman, right? He's an eccentric businessman.
Yes, he is.
He runs a tight ship.
Yes. Yeah, so what Willy Wonka is he's a cleaner, or he runs sanitation services. You could say. So he has a very large operation distributing sweets and candy and all kinds of goodies to the galaxy. But he is the galaxy's #1 undercover spice runner. And all of the Wonka treats will get you whacked out. You'll be an everlasting gobstopper. You will just be... He is a big spice lord. He's an eccentric spice lord. And if you get on his wrong side, he will blow you up.
Here's my only nitpick with that. Willy Wonka, though kind of villainous criminal in ways, is also really obsessed with the rules. Don't forget, you stole fizzy lifting drinks. You broke the rules. You lose. Good day, sir. And I don't think being a spice runner is following the rules.
Yes, but he's got the rules of like the Italian mafia kind of style. The rules of the syndicates. The syndicates.
Okay.
Watch Solo, Colin. Come on.
You're right. It was also against the rules to drop Veruca Salt down into that pit of knives or blow up the other one. I don't know what
exactly. You see, he takes over Dryden Voss and Darth Maul's criminal Crimson Dawn Empire, and he creates it and calls it Purple Dawn. And he brings in Prince as his bodyguard.
Got to get out of the house. Goodness gracious.
Yes, we do.
Well, congratulations. You did it. Okay, so let's take a week off. Then we'll come back and we'll start recapping. The season of this podcast, we've been 2 years in the making.
Yep.
Trying to recap Rise of Skywalker. So that'll come. Watch the first minutes of Rise of Skywalker and rejoin in a couple of weeks. In the meantime, stay well, stay healthy. If you have any comments on the podcast thus far, you can tweet us at Recorder66, email recorder66podcast@gmail.com. You may rate and review on your preferred podcast app, and we hope that you will. And until we are together again,
may the Force be with you.